Now, you have a clear research question about your intervention, which you've agreed with your team would affect your work. Here, we can learn from other disciplines. We'll look and see what research has already been done that addresses your question. Someone said to me once, it's like in medicine, we don't expect every hospital to be a test site. We expect the research to be done somewhere centrally, well, and published, and used. And we don't expect it to be replicated and repeated in every site. My background is in physics and in aircraft design, for example. Every aircraft is designed based on research that has been done somewhere. You do not ever want to be in an airplane which is part of a research program into aeronautical engineering or aerodynamics. You want that research to be done and then used by your airline and the aircraft manufacturer. I call this standing on the shoulders of giants, to use the phrase of Sir Isaac Newton, because you can just steal someone else's homework. You can use the answer that's already there.
So to get started, we're just going to look for research on the internet. There's no actual trick to this. It's literally just Googling stuff and talking to people.
You go look at the published literature. Ideally, what you find is a systematic review of all the literature which pertains to your question. A systematic review is like a 30,000 feet view of all the research. They are the best form of research because they are standing on the shoulders of many giants, as it were. And ideally, you would be able to find a systematic review. You may not be able to find that, but you may find a handful of good quality, reliable studies. But really what you want is some studies that have a clear identification strategy, that are robust, and which are conducted in circumstances that are relevant to you.
You might have some luck with Google Scholar, but a lot of scientists these days will just jump on Google, go to the institution directly and see what stuff they've published. It is a bit of a digging game.
So the question of identifying whether the research that you found is relevant to your situation sounds like a really easy question, but actually can be quite tricky. So you want to establish that the problem is the same, and that there's something about the theory of change, the reason that this solution leads to that outcome is the same in your situation as it is in the context in which the research was done. So, for example, giving children deworming pills might increase school attendance in Kenya, because the theory of change being that children there have intestinal worms, that makes them ill, that makes them not go to school. If you can give them deworming pills that kills the worms, then they're not ill, then they can go to school. That obviously does not pertain in Glasgow, because the reasons that children that skip school in Glasgow are nothing to do with them having intestinal worms. So you need to make sure that the theory of change, the mechanism by which that intervention produces those results, is sufficiently similar. And in really good research, the theory of change for the intervention will be stated. Quite often it isn't, but that can be enormously helpful to you in trying to understand whether it's likely to pertain to your circumstance.
Okay, so a few sense checks. Is there a clear theory of change? Does the context relate to the work that we're doing? And is there any practical implications to the research? Like, they'll literally have practical implications in the abstract, if you're lucky.
Good thing to do is just to get on the phone to a qualified researcher, probably an academic who works in that area, and just talk to them for 30, 40 minutes. And explain who you are and what you're doing and what your research question is, and try to see whether they happen to know of resources that pertain to that or other people working on it. It's often quite simple to find out who the relevant social science researchers are, because their names appear on the kinds of papers or in the kinds of conferences that relate to the kind of work that you're doing and your research question.
And like most things, when in doubt, Google it. There might be some really interesting information hidden inside an institution that's not published or on Google Scholar or whatever else. In fact, most academics will list their contact details on the website of the institution they work at, and you can just hit them up and get in touch.
This step is not trivial because the research in social sciences is not brilliantly available or catalogued. So it is not the case currently that there is some glorious database and you can just type in precisely your research question and it will show you everything that mankind knows that's relevant to that question. Well, one of the other problems is that a lot of social science literature is paywalled. So you might need subscriptions to journals. Again, that's part of the reason for just getting on the phone to an academic, because they might be able to give you their login illegally, or they might just be able to shortcut and tell you some of what the research says. I've often seen people physically go to their old universities to get in on the library. So this is all part of the problem with information architecture in the social sciences. It's very much a known problem.
So if you're anything like me, you're sitting here going, but I'm an entrepreneur, not an academic. Why are you making me get my head around all of this like academic mumbo jumbo? Well, even if you don't find the answers to the questions you're after, you're going to end up better informed about the work that you're doing. And that's going to really help the next time you sit down for a conversation with a funder or a partner.
You might find that there's plenty of good research and that the answer is already clear. Well, that's great news. Then you can just apply that to your work.
So let's say you find some research that's actually applicable, like they're doing malaria netting in Ghana and we want to do malaria netting in Kenya using the same approach. You can use their research to design an intervention, do the intervention, and then only collect data to prove that you're getting the same results as them. If you're not getting similar results, you've learnt you need to do more research on that intervention. Either way, we're starting with other people's work and then improving it if it needs improving.
What happens a lot in the charity and social enterprise sector is that funders ask charities and social enterprise for their impact research. You may not generate any new research yourself at all. You may just be using research that already exists. So it makes for slightly different conversations with funders and donors. This is a science, it's not a secret sauce. People will feel better about funding you if you're clear about what research you're using. And also then show others how you've used it. Show how your work is based on sound evidence. At its core, the power of this method means that you're always working towards helping your beneficiaries as much as possible by basing your work on sound evidence.